In a small, quiet town surrounded by green hills and old trees, there lived a little girl named Emma. She was 8 years old, with bright brown eyes and hair that always fell into her face when she concentrated. Emma was not like other children her age. While her friends spent afternoons playing tag or watching cartoons, Emma would sneak away to the small church at the end of her street. Inside that church, there was an old, worn-out piano. Its keys were yellow with age, and some of them made a buzzing sound when pressed. But to Emma, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. Emma had never taken a single piano lesson. Her family did not have much money. Her mother worked as a cleaner at the local school, and her father had left when Emma was only 3. They lived in a small apartment above a bakery, and the only music in their home came from a broken radio that could only play one station. But one day, when Emma was 4 years old, she walked past the church while the door was open. She heard the choir practicing inside, and she felt something pull her toward the piano. The church pianist, an old man named Mr. Wilson, saw her standing there with wide eyes. He lifted her onto the bench, and she placed her tiny fingers on the keys. Without any teaching, she began to play a melody that sounded like falling raindrops. Mr. Wilson's mouth fell open. He called her mother that very evening. From that day on, Emma visited the church every single day after school. Mr. Wilson showed her a few basic things, like where middle C was and how to sit properly. But Emma did not need much help. She could listen to a song once on the church's old CD player and then play it back perfectly. She did not know that this was called perfect pitch. She just thought everyone could do it. Mr. Wilson gave her a small book of simple songs, but Emma finished it in a week. Then she found an old music book with Beethoven's sonatas in the church storage room. The notes looked like tiny black spiders crawling across the page, but somehow Emma understood them. She taught herself to read music in less than a month. Mr. Wilson told her mother, "This child has a gift that comes once in 100 years." When Emma was 7, a flyer appeared on the bulletin board at her school. It announced a young musician competition in the big city, 3 hours away. The winner would receive a trophy and a chance to play at the city's famous concert hall. Emma's teacher saw her playing the piano during recess on the old school piano and begged her mother to let Emma enter. Her mother was scared. She did not have money for a fancy dress or for the travel to the city. But the school principal raised money from the parents, and a neighbor offered to drive them. Emma practiced every waking moment for 3 months. She chose a piece that Mr. Wilson said was far too hard for a child. It was called Rondo alla Turca by Mozart. The piece was fast, tricky, and required fingers to move like hummingbird wings. Emma practiced until her fingers ached, and then she practiced more. On the morning of the competition, Emma wore a simple blue dress that her mother had sewn herself. Her hair was pulled back with a white ribbon. She looked very small and very young as she walked into the huge hall where the competition was being held. The ceiling was so high that it felt like a cathedral. Rows and rows of red velvet chairs faced a grand black piano that shined like a mirror. 3 judges sat at a long table to the side. The first judge was a woman with sharp glasses and a tight bun. Her name was Dr. Patricia Hartman, and she had taught piano at the city's music school for 30 years. The second judge was a man with a gray beard named Mr. Leonard Black, who played in the city's symphony orchestra. The third judge was a young woman named Ms. Chloe Wong, a concert pianist who had toured the world. These 3 judges had heard thousands of children play. They could tell within 10 seconds if a child had real talent or just pushy parents. Emma's name was called near the end of the morning. She watched other children perform. A boy of 10 played a Chopin waltz but forgot the middle part and started crying. A girl of 12 played a loud, crashing piece that made the judges frown because she hit the wrong notes. A 7-year-old boy played Twinkle Twinkle so slowly that one judge yawned. Emma's heart pounded like a drum. She held her mother's hand so tightly that her mother whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Just play like you play at the church." When they called her name, Emma walked to the stage. Her shoes clicked on the wooden floor. The judges looked at her program. They saw the Mozart piece and exchanged glances. Dr. Hartman whispered to Mr. Black, another child playing music above her level, "This will be painful." They had seen it so many times before. Emma sat on the piano bench. Her feet did not reach the pedals, but she did not need them for this piece. She placed her small hands on the keys. For 1 second, she closed her eyes and remembered the smell of the old church and the buzzing yellow keys. Then she began to play. The first notes of the Rondo alla Turca exploded from the piano like a joyful laugh. Her fingers danced across the keys with a speed and clarity that made Ms. Wang sit straight up. The famous melody sang out, bright and clear, and Emma played each note with perfect timing. The tricky parts that made even adult pianists stumble came out of her fingers as easily as breathing. She played the fast ascending runs like a waterfall, and the repeated notes like a woodpecker drumming on a tree. The judges had stopped looking at each other. They were staring at this tiny girl in the blue dress who seemed to have been born with the music inside her bones. Emma played the final chord and held it for a moment. The sound faded into the high ceiling. The hall was completely silent. Then, before the judges could even clap, Emma did something that was not in the rules. She did not stand up and bow. Instead, she took a deep breath, and she began to play again. The judges looked at each other in confusion. The competition rules said each child had only one piece. But Emma did not know that, or perhaps she had forgotten. Her fingers were already moving across the keys, and this time, the music was completely different. It was not Mozart. It was not any piece they had ever heard before. The melody was slow and sad at first, like someone remembering a lost friend. Then it grew faster and happier, like playing in a field on a summer day. Then it became soft again, like raindrops on a window. Dr. Hartman leaned forward and squinted. She had never heard this music in her life. She turned to Mr. Black, who shrugged. Ms. Wang put her hand over her mouth. She realized what was happening before the others did. Emma was not playing a famous piece. Emma was composing. Right there, on the stage, in front of 3 judges and a silent audience. This 8-year-old girl was creating a brand new piece of music from her own heart. The piece lasted almost 4 minutes. Emma's face showed no strain. She seemed to be in a dream, her body swaying slightly as her hands moved from one end of the piano to the other. She used the black keys and the white keys. She played chords that sounded sweet and chords that sounded surprising. At one point, she played a low, rumbling note, and then a high, ringing note that floated like a bird. The judges could not look away. Ms. Wang felt tears in her eyes, not because the music was sad, but because she knew how difficult it was to compose even a simple song. And here was a child, with no formal training, no expensive teachers, no fancy music school, creating music that sounded like something from a dream. When Emma played the final chord, a soft, gentle chord that faded into nothing, she lifted her hands and placed them in her lap. Then she looked up at the judges with a shy smile, as if she had just done something very ordinary, like drawing a picture or tying her shoes. The silence lasted for 5 full seconds. Then Dr. Hartman began to clap. She clapped slowly at first, and then faster. Mr. Black joined her, and then Ms. Wang stood up and clapped with both hands above her head. The few parents and teachers in the audience clapped too, although they did not fully understand what they had just heard. Emma's mother was crying in the back row. The neighbor who drove them was shaking his head in disbelief. Emma stood up from the bench and gave a little bow, just like she had seen musicians do on television. Then she walked off the stage, her shoes clicking again, and went straight to her mother's arms. The judges asked for a short break before announcing the winners. They went into a small room behind the stage. Dr. Hartman sat down heavily in a chair. She pulled off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "I have been judging competitions for 30 years, she said. I have heard children who were very good. I have heard children who were excellent. I have never, in my entire career, heard a child do what that little girl just did." Mr. Black nodded slowly. The Mozart was impressive for her age. But that second piece, that was something else. "Do you think she actually composed it herself?" Ms. Wang spoke up. Her voice was quiet but firm. "I watched her hands. Every note was deliberate. She was not improvising randomly. She had a structure, a beginning, a middle, an end. She used themes and variations. That was a real composition. And she did not read it from any paper. She played it from memory. Her memory, because she wrote it in her head." The 3 judges sat in silence for a long moment. Then Dr. Hartman said, "We need to talk to her." They called Emma and her mother into the small room. Emma looked nervous. She held her mother's hand and stared at the floor. Dr. Hartman spoke in a gentle voice. "Emma, that second piece you played, where did you learn it?" Emma looked up. "I didn't learn it," she said. "I just made it up." Mr. Black leaned forward. "You made it up right now? On the spot?" Emma shook her head. "No, I made it up last week." I was thinking about the church piano and the rain outside, and the melody came to me. I practiced it a little bit at home on the table, but I wasn't sure if it was good enough to play here. Ms. Wang knelt down, so she was at Emma's eye level. Emma, do you know how many people in the world can compose music like that? Very, very few. And most of them are adults who have studied for many years. You have a gift. A very rare gift. Emma's mother wiped her eyes and said, she has never had a piano teacher. We cannot afford one. She learned everything from an old man at the church and from watching videos on the library computer. The judges looked at each other again. Something passed between them, a silent agreement. The competition results were announced an hour later. Emma did not win first place. The first place went to a 14-year-old boy who played a very difficult Liszt piece with perfect technique. Emma won second place, but the trophy was not what mattered. What mattered was what happened after the ceremony. Ms. Wang approached Emma's mother and handed her a business card. I teach at the city's music school, she said. I want Emma to come and study with me. Full scholarship. No cost to you. She will need to come once a week. I will also arrange for her to have composition lessons with a colleague of mine. Emma's mother started crying again. She tried to say thank you, but the words would not come out. Emma just smiled and looked at the business card. She could not read all the big words on it, but she saw a picture of a piano, and that was enough. As they walked out of the concert hall into the cool evening air, Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mom, she said, can we go back to the church tomorrow? I want to play this new piece for Mr. Wilson. Her mother laughed and hugged her. Yes, sweetheart. We can go anywhere you want. The news of Emma's performance spread faster than anyone expected. Ms. Wang told a friend, who told a newspaper reporter, who wrote a small article on the back page of the city newspaper. The article was titled, 8-Year-Old Composes at Competition, Stuns Judges. A local television station saw the article and sent a camera crew to Emma's town. They filmed her playing the old church piano. They interviewed Mr. Wilson, who could barely speak without crying. They interviewed Emma's mother, who kept saying, she just loves music. That's all. She just loves it. The video was posted online, and within 3 days, it had been watched over 1 million times. People from all over the world left comments. Some called her a genius. Some said they had tears in their eyes. A few people said it was a hoax, that no 8-year-old could do what she did. But then a video appeared online of Emma playing the same piece at the church, with the buzzing keys and the worn-out bench, and the doubters fell silent. Emma started her lessons with Ms. Wang the following Saturday. The music school was a grand building made of red brick, with tall windows and a lobby that smelled of wood polish and old paper. Emma had never been inside such a place. She saw students carrying violin cases and music bags. She heard scales being played behind closed doors. Ms. Wang introduced her to a man named Professor Ahmed, who taught composition. He was a thin man with a kind face and very small hands. He sat Emma down at a piano and asked her to play something. She played the piece she had composed at the competition. When she finished, Professor Ahmed was silent for a long time. Then he said, Emma, do you know what a sonata is? Emma shook her head. It is a piece of music with 3 parts, he said. What you just played has the shape of a sonata. You did not know the word, but you understood the idea. That is extraordinary. He then gave her a blank music paper and a pencil. Write down your next piece, he said. I will teach you how to put it on paper. For the next 6 months, Emma worked harder than she had ever worked in her life. She woke up at 6 every morning and practiced on a small keyboard that Ms. Wang had donated. She went to school, did her homework, and then took a bus to the city for her lessons. She learned music theory, which was like learning a new language. She learned about chords and scales and key signatures. She learned that the music in her head could be written down and played by anyone who could read the notes. She also learned that being talented was not enough. She had to practice every single day, even when she was tired, even when her fingers hurt, even when she wanted to play outside with her friends. There were days when she cried because a piece was too hard. There were days when she wanted to quit. But every time she sat at the piano and played a single note, she remembered the feeling of the church, the smell of the old wood, the way Mr. Wilson had smiled at her. And she kept going. A year passed. Emma turned 9. She had grown a little taller, but she was still small for her age. The music school held its annual spring concert at the big concert hall, the same one where the competition had been held. The best students were invited to perform, and Emma was one of them. She would play 2 pieces. The first was a Mozart sonata that she had learned perfectly. The second was a new composition of her own, a piece she had been working on for 4 months. She had told no one about it, not even Ms. Wang. She had written the notes on paper, hidden in her backpack, and practiced it only when she was alone in the church. Mr. Wilson had heard it once, and he had told her, "This is your best one yet." The night of the concert arrived. The hall was full. Emma's mother sat in the front row, wearing the same blue dress she had worn at the competition. Mr. Wilson sat next to her, holding a handkerchief. The 3 judges from the competition were also there, sitting in the back. Dr. Hartman had told everyone she knew about Emma. Ms. Wang introduced Emma from the stage. "This young lady," Ms. Wang said, "is one of the most gifted musicians I have ever met. Please welcome Emma-chan." Emma walked onto the stage. She was not nervous anymore. She had played this piano many times during her lessons. She sat down and played the Mozart piece beautifully. The audience applauded warmly. Then she took a breath. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play her new composition. The piece began with a single low note, held for a long time, like a deep breath. Then a high, delicate melody floated above it, like a bird singing in a quiet forest. The music grew and changed. It told a story without words. The story of a little girl who had nothing but a broken radio and an old church. The story of a mother who worked hard every day. The story of a kind old man who believed in her. The story of judges who saw something special. The story of finding a gift and sharing it with the world. The piece ended with the same low note, fading slowly into silence. Emma lifted her hands and let them rest on her knees. The hall was completely silent. No one clapped. No one moved. Then, slowly, like a wave rolling to shore, the applause began. 1 person clapped, then 10, then 100, then everyone. They clapped and cheered and whistled. Emma's mother was sobbing. Mr. Wilson had his handkerchief pressed to his face. Dr. Hartman was clapping so hard her hands turned red. After the concert, a man in a suit came backstage. He introduced himself as the director of a famous music festival in another country. He offered Emma a chance to perform there, all expenses paid. He also offered to record her music for an album. Emma looked at her mother, who nodded. Then she looked at the man and said, "Can Mr. Wilson come too?" The man smiled and said, "Of course. Anyone you want." That night, Emma sat on her mother's lap in the back of the neighbor's car, driving home through the dark streets. She was very tired, but very happy. Her mother kissed the top of her head and whispered, "I am so proud of you." Emma closed her eyes and heard the music still playing in her head. It would always be there, she realized. The music was not something she had learned or earned. The music was a part of her, like her hands or her heart. And as long as she had breath in her body, she would sit at a piano and let it out. The car climbed the green hill toward her small town. The stars were bright overhead. And somewhere in the distance, the old church stood silent and waiting, its yellow keys ready for another song.